Hey there, everyone. We are back with some comics I read this week. This is probably the least amount I've read in. I thought I was going to read a lot this week, but I actually didn't. I only read 2 books. So we've got Scott Snyder's Wytches is the first one here. This was good. It's kind of a horror story. You'd expect that it's about witches since it's called Wytches, but like the witches in this book are not like what you'd imagine to be witches. Wait, there is a movie that it kind of reminds me of. Fuck. I don't remember. It's like the Terrible B movie that's kind of based on an H.P. Lovecraft story where there's like a cemetery where there's like ghouls that live underneath the cemetery. That's kind of like what this is, except there's like it's a little different. But first of all, the art in this book is really good. That's a cover, but like even the regular art is like, yeah, that's pretty nice. It's got like a nice kind of look to it. The characters all look good. You know, it's got a nice kind of dark, splattery kind of horror look to it. But like, you know, like scene like that, yeah, that's nice. So like you've got a lot of it's a kind of an interesting story about a girl who, she's somehow involved in a murder. She's not the murderer, but like someone gets murdered. A bully who is bullying her gets murdered while in the act of bullying her, and like, it's pretty horrific. But like it's obvious that she didn't do it. So like, but there's like kind of a thing with this going on where like, she's part of this kind of killing or whatever. So they moved to a new town to get away from like the the state of things. Just like if you're involved in this kind of weird ass shit, you're gonna be kind of in a situation that's not so hot for you as a teenager or whatever. So they moved to a new town and she's like she's kind of a little crazy, it seems. And she believes that these things are attacking her, and the father and the mother are kind of stressed out. The father is like trying to be very supportive, but he's kind of like previously a drunk and like wasn't supportive in the past, so like he doesn't quite have the trust that he wishes that they had. And it's a pretty interesting story though. Like it seems like a little soap opera there, but like it's actually not. It's a pretty solid story. And by the time you get about halfway through, it starts to really pick up. So like, not that the first half is boring or anything, but like you kind of get a good setup in the beginning, and then you get a nice kind of payoff towards the ending. And I don't know that there's more of this. I think it's a pretty complete story, though it could continue. I don't know that there's going to be more, but it's pretty good. Scott Snyder usually does some pretty good stuff. He's like the dude who wrote Batman for a while. That was really good. But yeah, that was a good book. Scott Snyder's Wytches. That's on Image, and it's just a single book. It's pretty cheap, like less than $10 to get that thing new. So good stuff. And the second book, more Hellblazer. So this is The Family Man. The Family Man. This is another thing that is like a crossover, kind of, with Sandman. So like Sandman doesn't appear in this book, but the Family Man is mentioned in Sandman. So in Sandman, there's a story about a serial killer convention where like all these serial killers from around the world have been like invited to this convention to have like a panels and things for serial killers. It's kind of a wacky idea, right? But like it's interesting. But in this story, like the Family Man is like, well, in the Sandman story, the Family Man is mentioned as like someone who doesn't show up. He's like someone that they all wanted to meet, but he didn't show up. In this story is the Family Man. He's here. So like you see like in this story, you get to see the like, he gets the invitation for the serial killer thing that happened in Sandman. That's like the only crossover really, besides like the Family Man himself. But he's not in the Sandman comic, he's in here, and you get to figure out why he doesn't show up to the convention by the story where he's interacting with Constantine. And like that's most of it. That's like not the entirety of this book. There are a couple of you can see on the cover here, like Jamie Delano is the main writer for Sandman up until like the next next book where it switches to Garth Ennis. But Jamie Delano's the main writer. But there's also some short stories, like some one-shots, or I guess like in Grant Morrison's case, it's a double 2 issues. But Neil Gaiman has a one-shot in here so you've got the Family Man story, and then it switches to a Grant Morrison story. And this one is like How I Learned to Love the Bomb. And it's kind of a weird story where like some kind of government project makes the people of this town go kind of insane. And they have like this weird festival that they do every year, and like they get turned insane during this festival, and like it makes them like do all the things that they would normally do without any control. So like there's all these like weird rapes and murders and things happening with the whole town, like everybody. And it's left to Constantine to figure out how to stop it, which he fails in a normal Constantine way. Constantine never gets anything right. I think that's one of the it's one of the things that makes him likable, right? So like you expect that like normal characters in comics have like a solid ending. They win, they're the hero. Constantine is never the hero. Like he stumbles into being the hero, and even when he like kind of is the hero, he's usually not. So like he's just a fuck up, and he's just kind of always doing like things that are good for him but not for anybody else. It's kind of how the story is. And then there's like this other story with Neil Gaiman where the art is really different. I actually really quite like it. I wonder who the artist is. It might be Dave McKean, actually. I'm gonna look. Drawn by Dave McKean, I was right. So you can see it's a totally different art style than the previous issues, but like it's really nice. Dave McKean is a salad. But this is a different story. It's like a one-shot Constantine story about like some kind of ghosts. This one actually has like a solid ending though. Constantine actually does the right thing for once. So like he actually gets a good ending. Not necessarily for him, but for the people involved. It's like it's finally a story where Constantine's friends don't get killed because of him. So yeah, that's about it for this. Like those like issues are split in between where it goes back to the Family Man again, and you get like kind of the conclusion of the Family Man story. And then there's like a couple issues that are just the fallout from stuff that happened with the Family Man story. Followed by like a story, just a one-off story about like possessed dogs and this weird kind of like, I don't know, like a hippie hallucination story. And then at the end, there's like kind of an actual prose story. It's like, it's not that long. It's like a short story. It's 5 pages maybe. But, this is like nearing the end of the Jamie Delano run and starting the kind of Garth Ennis run, which is most people tend to like more. But this is good. Constantine is Constantine. So Hellblazer is going to be, if you like Constantine, you like Hellblazer, you're going to like this. It's got a lot of interesting stuff. I really, I don't know. There's not any really terrible things about this. There's no like, I think like at this point people are kind of getting tired of the Jamie Delano writing in this. That seems to be like the common kind of, it starts out strong and kind of goes downhill a little bit, and then like they, and I think even they might have realized it because they threw in a bunch of extra writers. Neil Gaiman and Grant Morrison, like that's like pretty, solid pinch hitters. But like, I don't know. I don't feel that like the Jamie Delano stories are bad or anything. I think a lot of people felt like it's kind of like a one note in the sense that like John Constantine stumbles into a situation with somebody he knows, he does something and that person ends up dying. That is kind of the pattern, right? But it's not like a constant pattern. There's like the dog story doesn't have any of his friends die, I don't think. And then like the other like kind of psycho hippie freak out story doesn't have anybody die. But, as I said, the next book, which I have, is the probably like one of the most famous Constantine arcs that Garth Ennis run that they made the movie into. So yeah, that'll do it. That's the two things I read this week. I have like a bunch of other stuff I'm reading. It's just like the stuff I chose, I thought like, oh, I can finish this, but actually it's like a much bigger than I thought it was. So like I have like a bunch of huge books I'm reading. So like eventually I'll finish those, and the amount of things I finish will be better. But instead, like I tend to read things in like a real disjointed kind of way. Like I don't like take an omnibus and just like read through it, right? I'll just like read one issue, put it down, go to another book I'm reading and read one issue out of like, you know, a collected book. And then eventually I start finishing them. So eventually, I mean, I'll finish them all, but like I've got a stack that I just like cycle through, reading one issue at a time and then kind of cycling back. I guess I could like eventually read them all at once, but it seems less fun that way. So yeah, that's it for this week. Next week I'll have more, so catch you guys next time.